friend of mine, Hannah Echo, born on the island of Themyscira, I'm sorry I murdered that, raised as queen of the Amazons. Hannah Echo loves female supremacy, bondage games, and riding around in her invisible jet. She left the island of women to embark on a crazy turn of life as an MFA student. The devastations of patriarchy break her heart on the daily, and Wonder Woman, whoops, Hannah Echo, often longs for her warrior princess days. She consoles herself with feminist theory, daydreaming and watching old music videos on YouTube. When she is not making offerings to the goddess and slaying evil men, she is writing and ordering the cheapest menu item at Panera. Round of applause for Hannah Echo, aka
All right, so I'm going to be reading, how much time do I have again?
You have 6 to 8 minutes.
Okay, so I'm going to be reading a short story. I don't think I'll be able to finish it, but at least we'll get to a good majority, and I hope you enjoy it. It's called Minora. I really wish you wanted it, Stu said, and ran a hand over Shirley's thigh. Shirley patted Stu's chest and looked out the window at the skinny outline of palm trees. The ceiling fan spun lazily, and her bedroom was bathed in a soft yellow light. She wishes they could talk about anything besides the same wandering discussion. Every time you try, it's a disaster, she said. Shirley Jones was a magna cum laude Sarah Lawrence graduate. She and Stu moved to California after graduation, and now she worked at a female empowerment NGO. Shirley's colleagues loved her accessible black hippie style, her gold-wrapped dreadlocks, and her silver septum ring. Stu had an unironic disco mustache and a compact bicyclist body. His pride and joy was a sincere cunnilingus prowess. He once said, aloud, that going down on a woman was ingesting ambrosia from the goddess herself. Yes. Shirley almost vomited when she first heard him say that. When you think of, and here, Stu gestured at the center of Shirley's lap, hidden under the cotton blanket. When you think of her, what do you align with more? Now he pointed to the tin wastebasket, filled with discarded catalogs and browning banana peels. Then he pointed to the vase of yellow roses and pussy willows on Shirley's dresser. Shirley held her breath every time she had to take off her underwear for fear of what she might smell, and her protruding outer lips made her deathly afraid of spandex pants. Shirley's eyes lingered on the trash can, the silken straight lines of the banana peel, the disorderly ripped pages almost overflowing. The garbage, I guess, she laughed to make it a joke and softly elbowed Stu's rib. Stu's eyes filled with tears. He was a Pisces, fluid and easy to dissolve. So, you think I'm fucking garbage? How could you say that? I love you, Shirley said, and immediately leaned her head against the tight, curly balls of hair on Stu's chest. His sweat coated her cheek like a mask, and she didn't care. Shirley thought of her maternal grandmother, who slapped Shirley's vulva with a wooden ruler. The session started when Shirley wore pastel day-of-the-week underwear with elephants, tigers, and giraffes announcing weekdays. They ended once she attended chaperone school dances. This was when Shirley learned the fine art of dissociation during these sessions and psychically traveled to mountainous islands with pink, puffy clouds. No, Shirley. He raised her head and gently turned her wet chin. You think I'm fucking garbage. Shirley pictured Stu grinding his hip bones against a swollen black trash bag. She wished she could answer, no. Instead, she used her phone to add Love Your V class to her online shopping cart and showed the purchase to Stu, who smiled, her cure already awake in his eyes. She let her hand rest on Stu's barely there belly and wondered whether he ever thought of other goddess pots to sample. Sarah Lawrence had nothing on Southern California. The air smelled of Greek yogurt and yoga mat disinfectant. Shirley shielded her eyes from the array of sweating labia around her, counted to 10 over and over in her head to steal her breath. She was terrified that any minute a chunk of partially digested Cuban sandwich, her lunch, would escape her mouth. Goddesses, feast upon your yoni and allow your true motions to sweep over you, Genesis said. Love Your Bee was led by Genesis Cohen, former Bikram instructor, now sexual shamanistic coach. She had a long, unmoving gray halo of Jewish curls and the wisdom wrinkles of a crone. Her tagline was, say yes to Yoni, say yes to you. I'm so glad you came back, Shirley, Genesis said, looking over at her. Shirley nodded something cheery and affirmative. She was having a panic attack. The yoga studio's large and handsome windows were blacked out with purple curtains, and the women sitting in the circle used candle-lighted mirrors to gaze intently between their legs. Some were crying, shoulders shaking with tiny jiggles. An extrovert with a severe mid-chin bob hit the wood floor with loud hiccuping sobs, her breath swinging like a sloppy pendulum. Shirley wished she felt what these women were clearly experiencing, but she was just tired. She averted her eyes from her vulva by directing her gaze just above the corner of the gem-laden mirror. Gaze upon that delicious plethora of magenta and violet. Shirley, those are your flowing drapes of pleasure. Genesis' grin stretched across her face like a horizon. She was so intent on looking at the mirrored reflection that she did not observe where Shirley was decidedly not looking. Shirley wished that Genesis would shut the fuck up. But she, of course, did not say this. This workshop was far too expensive to throw a tantrum, so she swallowed down her acid reflux and smiled hard. Thank you.
All right, so I'd like to introduce our next reader, Megan Donnely. Megan spent the past 6 years living and teaching in Bush, Alaska. She has involuntarily landed a plane, eaten whale from the Chukchi Sea, and witnessed polar bears dumpster diving. Without further ado, Megan, thank you.
Just so you know, my piece does, it's a little bloody, it's a little gory, which is great on the one hand because it is Halloween, but it does involve miscarriage, so if that's potential, problem for anyone, no hard feelings. Okay, so it's called A Place with Teeth, and it's about a miscarriage that I had my first year when I was teaching in rural Alaska. Okay. Oh, and we might not finish it, so apologies in advance. I didn't know about the 68 minutes. I have a student, a kindergartner, who runs a trap line with her dad. She has a mini snowmobile that she rides alongside his grown-up snowmobile and points to where she wants him to set her traps on the tundra. Together, they pry open the jaws, set the bait, and cover up their traces. The traps they set are for foxes. The trap grabs a foot and holds on without breaking a skin. They can be used for catch and release hunting. They don't hurt the animal, the dad explains to me, standing behind two very dead, very frozen foxes, lying stiffly on their sides on the table at the back of my classroom. This year I was teaching kindergarten. The rainbow table, I call it. I bring small groups of students here. We play practice games and read our decodable readers with titles like Pal Has Sam and What Can Two Do? What can two do? I wonder as we turn the pages of The Two Girls in a Sandbox. It's been so long I hardly remember what sweet, messy things one person can do with another. My students line up to touch the foxes, their fur unfathomably white and deep and soft, their small black noses so perfectly shaped, their teeth white and curved and useless now in death. I will touch. I won't touch. I will. Cautiously reaching my hand forward. The fur is luscious but feels too cold, weirdly cold, and I pull my hand back, walking quickly to the sink, pushing to the front of the line to wash that coldness away, the coldness of death from my hands. I wander back again to supervise the process. Look, a small voice calls. I look. Warming in the heat of my classroom and under the small, hot hands of my curious students, the foxes begin to thaw. Little puddles of blood form beneath their mouths. The place where there should be an eye is just frozen red pulp. Blood drips from that place, too. I try not to think about that eye and not to picture what force drove that eye from the small, perfect skull of the small, perfect animal beginning to warm and bleed on my rainbow table. These foxes offered themselves, the dad explains. We respect them. I smile and nod and explain I'm so glad he could come with these frozen foxes and their warming, bleeding bodies. We clap for the girl and for her father, for respecting the foxes, for accepting their offering, and for the work they do to uphold their cultural heritage. I imagine my students reading a new story at the rainbow table, one that perhaps I will write in honor of this day. The fox is cold, turn the page. The fox gets warm, turn the page. The fox bleeds, the end. We can call the story The Fox. 3 years ago, we were running late to school, scrambling through the pebbled ground and fighting through that constant, relentless wind. It was my first year in Alaska, a lifetime ago, in a village far from where I am now. I was teaching second grade, and he was teaching English to high school students. Another teacher rode up on one of the red school-provided four-wheelers and offered us a ride. Despite the frigid, mile-long battle against the wind, I usually prefer to walk. The politics surrounding those two red four-wheelers are deep-rooted and complicated. This day I was pregnant and tired and running late, and we took the ride. The past few days I'd been bleeding. I smelled the blood that pooled in the thick pads I wore between my thighs obsessively. I would take little sniffs, taking in the first immediate pungent overtones, and then the more subtle layered notes beneath. It always smelled the same. It smelled like death. We hopped on the back of the four-wheeler and held on tightly as we fought our way through the wind to the school building. We bounced our way there, and as we neared the front steps, I felt something deep inside me give way. It wasn't violent, it wasn't painful. It was like peeling off the last little bit of an old Band-Aid, the adhesive weakened from time and sweat. It put up no resistance at all. I walked inside the building and went to my classroom. I took off my snow pants and my parka and my mittens and my boots and my hat and my goggles and wool socks. So many carefully constructed layers of protection. I could feel the heavy wetness between my legs. The faster my heart beat, the more deliberately I moved. I spent a small forever walking down the hall from my classroom to the teacher's workroom where there was a private bathroom. I stepped inside, and both knowing and not knowing, I pulled down my underwear. The thick overnight pad was already soaked in blood. Blood streamed from my body when I sat down gingerly on the toilet seat. The warm smell of death filled the small bathroom. My body cramped and I could feel pressure of something building up inside, almost like your body's natural movements when you take a shit, but this was my vagina. Clenching and releasing and feeling full and feeling pressure from somewhere up and deep inside me. Blood clots streamed one after another into the toilet, and each one brought a sense of relief, a small lessening of the pressure. The blood clots were followed by 3 fist-sized spheres that felt like jello being squeezed from my vagina. My body registered sensations. My brain registered only fear. I don't remember thinking of this stinking mess as my baby. It was a stinking, bloody mess in a toilet, and reflexively, I reached back for the toilet handle and flushed it all away. Erase, do-over, try again next time. I sat there still bleeding, knowing class was about to begin. I put a fresh overnight-sized pad into my underwear and cleaned up as best I could. I worried that everyone would be able to smell the lingering odor of death on me. Blood was already filling the new pad between my thighs. How can I teach with all this blood, I worried. No one knew I was pregnant. He knew, of course, and my principal knew because I had requested time off to get an abortion in Anchorage, an abortion that was scheduled for Saturday morning, just 2 days away. Both of us were booked on the flight right after school to give us some wiggle room in case the weather turned. We had prepared for the weather, but we hadn't known to prepare for this. No one else knew, not my friends, not my family. Why have them worry, I told myself. They were already concerned that I'd left my warm, sunny haven for cold, dark, faraway land with different foods and language and traditions. It'll be fine, I had told them. It'll be an adventure. I was in love. Love is an eternal optimist. I walked back to my classroom. The bell rang and I stood silently before my second grade students. I was full of blood. I was frozen, terrified that the wrong step would send rivers of blood flowing down my thighs. Trying to smile at them reassuringly, I walked stiff-legged to the door and flagged down a passing teacher. I have to go, I said. Please stay with them. She must have seen the desperation in my face. She nodded, stepping inside, and I hobbled my way to the principal's office. I have to go home, I told her. I'm bleeding. Right now? I had a miscarriage in the bathroom. I tried to explain. She reluctantly nodded. I walked home a mile in the cold and the wind, still bleeding. I got into the shower and washed my body, watching as the blood flowed down my legs and swirled in the stream and trailed down the length of the tub to wash away in the drain. I stood there wrinkling and pruning. He came home at lunch to check on me. I was pale and motionless on the couch. He kissed me on the forehead and left again. That night, we got on the plane first to Nome and then to Anchorage. I remember we had a beer, which was exciting because we lived in a dry village. No alcohol could be brewed or brought into the community. This was a vacation. I spent the next day bleeding. How could there still be so much blood? Saturday morning, we went to the clinic. When my name was called, he sat in the waiting area, and I was led alone through the door and into the examination room. I took off my clothes, including the underwear with yet another blood-soaked overnight pad, and put on the crinkly paper gown. I was embarrassed by the blood and the smell. I made myself small and quiet because I was afraid. A nurse came in, and I spread my legs for her. She inserted a long wand into my vagina. Looking at her screen, she told me there was not an intact fetus inside me. For the first time in weeks, I felt hopeful. I allowed myself to think that these lovely doctors and nurses would send me away with a sticker or a pencil or some other toy from the treasure chest, and I would be free to leave and go to the pizza place with a really good IPA. I allowed myself to hope that I could leave without having the planned procedure. So much trauma had already happened inside me in such tender places. I asked my nurse, staring to lift my eyes to her eyes, "Can I go home then?" She looked at me surprised and said, "No, there's still fetal tissue inside you that needs to be removed." For the first time since I had started bleeding, I cried. Sobbing in my paper gown, I asked, "Are you sure?" The nurse was surprised and awkward in her response. "Isn't this why I'd come?" "Can he come in?" I sobbed. "Will you bring him to me?" He had been waiting for me. They went and got him, and I cried in his arms, and he told me it would be okay. He said he would stay. He would stay through everything. He came with me as I got prepped and took the pain medications. He held my hand and let me squeeze as hard as I could when they put the needle inside me. He gently teased me when I was loopy and silly from the pills. I just looked in his eyes during the rest of it. I felt no pain. I felt safe and cared for. "We can try again when we're ready," he promised. But Alaska's a hard place to live. Our love was a frail thing, weak. It couldn't survive the wild, and like our baby, it died. 3 years later, I'm teaching in yet another Alaskan village, witnessing another kind of death. A few days after my student's father visited our classroom with the 2 foxes, I see him in the hallway at the end of the day. "I want to show you something," he says, holding out his phone. "This is the video of when we first saw the foxes in our traps." Watching the video on the tiny screen of his phone, I hear the crunching of the snow as the girl and her father walk out to check on the traps. "I see something," I hear a high, excited voice cry. "I see something." We pan over and see 2 foxes snarling and pulling at their feet, scrambling on the snow trying to run. I looked in the eyes, the intact eyes of those foxes, and I try to see the offering, but I don't. I don't see it. I look into those eyes and I see fear. I see death. Given the opportunity, I wonder if those foxes would be willing to gnaw off the foot holding them in that trap. This place has teeth, I realized, watching the last few moments of the lives of those 2 foxes. When I leave Alaska, I'll be leaving pieces of myself behind. I imagine the bloody pieces of my own flesh still warm in the snow. I look at the ravaged part of me still left and wonder what more will I have to sacrifice.
Next up is Willie Kinard III. Willie Kinard III is a graphic designer, returned poet of South Carolina cricket songs, co-creator and editor-in-chief of For the Scribes. His work appears in Glass, a journal of poetry, Craft That magazine, Platypus, a portrait and blues anthology, and elsewhere. Okay! Currently an MFA student in the creative writing program at the University of Pittsburgh, he has a singer's soul. He'll probably fight you over Steven Universe and enjoys woodworking and wand making. Willie's Pocket of the Internet is located at williekinard3.com. Please welcome Willie.
I'm gonna try to project. I'm a little hoarse, but we're gonna make it work. So I got 4 poems for you today. First, Night with the Bumblebee. Once, a man said my body resembled a ruptured zipper, a stifled, bubbling trapped beneath the seams, and only his diligence could succeed in freeing it. A penchant He swung below his belt, parched for music, though I recall, again, is the name of his group of bees intent on swindling me out of my language when my body didn't quite sing anymore. Though I am told to wait for the petition of an arch before letting anything mount in June's dewy silence, again, I am shaving my legs for a night that will never taste my worries, nor the reddened wing prints sitting just above my coccyx, and wondering why it is only my ends that I am concerned about being split. I don't have the words for what one might call this kind of burial, but surely, beneath the dermis, is a mound of bugles once played for only wet kisses and a weak nut God, of the drones that do lay lip to my torso, now rot entombed between the crease. I ask, how does one rip a stitching and the sorrow not seep out? Is there no fury in the punching? No fanfare in the pipe? Thank you. An ode to my southern roots, this is friction. There ain't but two ways to clean a fish. Head first, lick the scales off it with a spoon. Body first, felt up before one leg goes numb. One mind screams out for lip balm. Blowing bubbles in milk ain't supposed to be like playing violin with the nerve. You're supposed to make room for the air to warm, for the skin to fall off, for the hope to thirst and beg for water, and to wipe the froth from your lip after either puncture. Thank you. To the almost love, this is postcard. Lips part, forks clink against borrowed breakfastware. Strawberries and waffle crumbs scatter about them. Hands part. Orange juice is offered in a glass. I wonder whether the person reflected in the bacon grease still whispers to God while he pushes his glasses up. Hands clasp. I look at his fork. He pushes the strawberries into the corner. He promises to send it once he gets there. I open my mouth. Truth shivers as if struck jam. Glass is emptied. His fogged glasses fall again. He drops his map. I throw his glasses somewhere in the corner. Lips clasp. I squeeze my best bit of concern out of a tube. We lie in the bacon grease. We love until we taste the syrup in each other's laugh. Pray it give us 1 minute more to live in this moment. Lips part. We beg that we can make dulcet tones just like chuckles of last time. I try hard to taste them. Hands clasp. I strike jam. Lips part. Strawberries fall from his eyes. Truth flies a foot over my head. He opens his mouth. Glass fills with truth shot across the room. Hands part. I clean up the crumbs. He steps on his glasses. I throw away the forks. He takes his plates. The corner smells like waffles. I wipe orange juice from my brow. I try hard not to forget what his map tastes like. He gets there. He doesn't send it. I wish we hadn't stopped laughing. Thank you. And as spooky season comes to a close, for the songbird supreme, this is Fly Like a Bird. At the very end of the emancipation of Mimi, Mariah Carey relinquishes the hold of her steed, summons the brimstone, polishes her old frenzy's ghosts, against the wishes of a shivering man's worries, bounds 2 octaves for the glories of Icarus, for the supper table invocation, for the pot of greens only one savior could throw a ham hock into, for cries into the watchful dusk, for all the names the night is given. Call it trouble, call it grimoire, call it 3 boys, no, 4, call it weeping, call it diva, a torturous cry, call for freedom, call for father, call for dawning, call for furnace, burn the loom, loose the feathers, rake the needles, spin the text, a nest of coins, a payment bird lady, a payphone, a waxwing prayer, a busted joint, a wretched penance from whence one might just flee. Spring, jump, darling, jump, and of the sun steals it. Thank you.
So our next reader is a first-year MFA in fiction, Kelly Chastain. So Kelly Chastain is an MFA candidate at the University of Pittsburgh, focusing on fiction writing. Her work has appeared in the Borough Press Review, the Citron Review, Cactus Heart Press, Silk Road Review, and has work anthologized in Traveler's Tales Best Travel Writing Volume 10, and a notable essay in Best American Essays 2015, among others. Currently, she is working on a historical novel. She's been supported by fellowships and a residency from Milkwood International Writing Residency, Český Krumlov, Czech Republic. You can find her at kellychastain.com. Welcome, Kelly.
All right. So I'm going to read 2 pieces for you, 1 piece of flash fiction and 1 that's microfiction. The first one is a flash fiction piece called The Purification of the Temple, also known as The Asshole Story. So maybe when we're done, we'll take a vote on which one we think is more appropriate for a title. Okay, The Purification of the Temple. According to the infomercial, the Apple Cinnamon Detox Kit contained a 3-week supply of psyllium powder and specially formulated herbs to thoroughly, yet gently, rid Lynette's body of all known toxins, helping her to shed the 37 pounds of post-divorce stress weight and return her skin to its prepubescent glow. She couldn't remember exactly what her skin had looked like then. It had been more than 30 years since the first spot of blood bloomed in her panties, but she knew that her crow's feet, the fine laugh lines around her mouth, and the ever-present stomach bloat that she referred to as her baby balloon were not part of it. It had been a full week since she'd begun mixing the powder with 6 ounces of apple juice and a tablespoon of cider vinegar, just as the package instructed. She choked it down, along with 4 giant herb-filled capsules that smelled suspiciously like fresh-cut grass and mushrooms. Every morning, about an hour after breakfast, the squeezing in her guts would begin, and by the time she made it into the bathroom, her bowels would twist as if being wrung out like a wet dishcloth. She didn't mind. She had pored over the webpage, explaining how the herbs worked like little miners, chipping away the fecal buildup on the walls of her colon. The testimonials included several statements from people who had lost up to 30 pounds on the protocol, consisting mostly of years-old shit that had compacted in their intestines. Lynette began to welcome the pain in her guts each morning, anxiously anticipating a change to the number on her scale. To her co-workers in the accounting department, she affectionately referred to the herbs as her little blasting agents. Halfway through the second week, the time it took the herbs to work their magic had compressed, and she found herself parked on the toilet a minute after starting the coffee pot, the cramping more intense than the weekend she had spent in her dorm room suffering from salmonella poisoning. She chalked it up to the work the miners were doing on her behalf. If it hurt this badly, surely a big change was coming. The scale hadn't moved, but she carried on, undeterred. Annie F. from Glens Falls, New York, had reported on the website that her scale hadn't budged the first 2 weeks either, but the third week was like all of her Christmases had come at once. 15 pounds down, and although she was still a bit woozy each day, she was back into a pair of pants that she hadn't worn in 8 years. Lynette scrolled through the endorsement on her phone, smiling at the exclamation points and the before and after pictures, especially Annie's svelte frame in the second one. Even though the woman's eyes looked positively hollowed out, the size of her thighs was something to envy. By the third week, Lynette could barely swallow the concoction. The mere smell of it almost made her retch, but she pushed through the nausea. The scale had moved down 1 pound, and her skin did seem a little dewy. It might have been from the profuse sweating brought on by the herbs. The package listed it as a known yet uncommon side effect. Now she swallowed her regimen while already sitting on the toilet, the effects coming immediately. She had at least half an hour to sit and think, so she leafed through the stack of fitness and beauty magazines she kept in a stylish rack near the sink, and woefully cried out as the volleys of pain shot through her guts as hot as lightning. Her asshole puckered as if it had just French kissed a bottle of Tabasco sauce. Lynette gripped the magazine in her clenched fists, tried to remember the breathing techniques she had learned in Lamaze classes all of those years ago, and when that failed, she prayed. When the episode finally passed, it left her weak and shaking, her back covered in a sheen of sweat. As she gasped to catch her breath, the magazine fell to the floor in front of her, landing open on a 2-page ad with a young, thin fitness model on one side and a delicate, beautiful font scrawled across the other. Slim in 6. She swiped the book from the floor and read in earnest, no tonics, no supplements, no exercise. A miracle salve you apply to problem areas twice a day. She groped for her phone on the bathroom counter and punched in the 800 number listed at the bottom of the page. She chose next day shipping, and her 2-month supply of Wonder Cream would land on her porch by 10 o'clock the next morning. So I thought we would land on like a nicer image than the Tabasco sauce. This is a piece of microfiction that was in a themed magazine. The magazine theme, I think, was Farewell, but I can't remember which one it was. So anyway, it's called Innsbruck. At midnight, we stood on the balcony outside the chalet. The valley fell sharply before us, and the slender snake of water below shone like a black mirror. Under the light of a yellow moon, you whispered a crushing goodbye, the words made beautiful in their curling white wisps. As they dissolved into the alpine air, I wondered if you had really said them, and if I would remember Innsbruck as this dizzying moment, a silence so empty that our eyes could no longer meet. Or if I would remember the blankets of snow on the peaks, the chill of the wind as it crept up the slopes, slowly at first, until it gave way to a blustering howl. The kind that frosted the marrow and made you wish for something more significant than warmth. A whisper at dawn, a hand on the small of your back, lips trailing between your shoulder blades.
Last but not least, I am so excited to present my fellow cohort mate, my fellow Californian West Coaster, Jari Bradley. Jari Bradley is a Black Denver poet and scholar from San Francisco, California. Yes. Jari has received fellowships from Honolulu, Cave Canem, and Tin House. Their work has been featured in the Huffington Post and is listed by Blavity among 15 creatives in the Bay Area you should know. Jari work has also published or forthcoming in the Adrot Journal, Callaloo, Hot Metal Bridge, Nomadic Ground Press, the Virginia Quarterly Review, Boat Journal, and Pumpkin Books Anti-Racism Inc. By the way, we talk about racial justice matters. Jari has an MA in Ethnic Studies from San Francisco State University and is a recent MFA candidate at the University of Pittsburgh. They currently serve as poetry editor of the University of Pittsburgh literary magazine, Hot Metal Bridge. Jari Bradley.
I've been sipping. Okay, so anyway,
I'm gonna just hit y'all with one oldie but goodie, and then some new stuff I haven't really read anywhere except for poetry workshops. Dysphoria. I say boy, not sure if I mean myself or an undoing, a slippage of sex, but always meaning a tender violence or child's play, a way of becoming. I say boy and mean a small god of making, an appraisal of my bad shape, its favor of the blood that does and does not come. Dysphoria is what it is called when I say I don't care for my breast, or is what I mean by they get in the way. I say man and mean hunger or twin tongue, a kin taste for cruelty, stalled at the sight of the first wound. I say heal and mean to keep the dogged fear at bay as its hands tear into my hefty frame, persistent until I feel a pit opening inside me. I say girl and mean Lord, have mercy on those days where I didn't deserve any of it. Have mercy on how weak I believed I was. Y'all are kind. Thank you. Dominion. In the book of Genesis, God says, let us make man in our image after our likeness. I consider the fluidity of creation. What if in the beginning man was a sexless thing in search of his name? In the beginning, I was a sexless thing housed with a man that pummeled my mother's body up and down, our bodies, his dominion, his hands, teaching us both the meaning of fear and God. What God granted Adam, his ability to gaze into a body, to give it a name, to give the husk of a thing meaning. I think all this as a man broad-shouldered and chisel-jawed flashes his semi-good teeth in my girlfriend's direction. As a man, what is the protocol? As myself, the protocol is silence. I know there are such things as right and wrong bodies, mine soft in all the arid places, the expanse of my body often read effeminate. How do I man this situation? At what point do I feel man enough to man anything? I'm too busy manning my voice, deepening the pockets of my throat for non-detection. And this, believe it or not, is a line of defense. I manned hard enough to meet his roaming eyes and was met with a heavy-headed dap while giving the name brother a temporary kinship. This poem comes from a series of poems I'm trying to write about San Francisco and what it meant to be home, but also to leave home. So this poem is entitled Exodus 2. There is home nowhere, not even as I stand center of the Eureka Valley, prideless, the heft of myself crushed from all sides in a sea of glitter and white faces that don't care if my black ass never breathes again under their rainbow. In all the ways my body stands outside the object of their desire. I'm 21 in the Castro. The first time my name is pronounced nigger, left burning at all four corners inside the eyes of a stammering white girl drunk off the hubris of her cherished skin. I am fit to be no one's pup or dark fetish. I have no master to lord over me beneath an arched entrance or alleyway or muni station. And I accept that dark, its exit forged in fire, all that flame searing my blood. I am bottomless, a hole unworthy of being filled. This last poem is a really new poem. I just wrote it this week. New shit. So hopefully, thank you. So hopefully this goes over well. Trigonometry, after James Baldwin's Untitled. If a man swallows a bomb and the Lord in the same sentence, and when his countrymen make him someone to pity, you no longer question the deadly possibility of that man if he'd send a package of bombs to bodies unlike his. The promise blighted from their black bodies a crimson rain his countrymen never bothered to shield their eyes from or think of the black mother or the loss of her black son. About the ground, a heap of snapped synapse and sinew can drive you insane, like that very man who heard please and still desired to fill a black body with so much light it burst. Little is said from a country full of men who do not act as men, men who do not understand themselves outside of violence and get caught in the act of an explosive trapped, carried inside its own ticking. Its time almost up. Away, the man attempted to swallow the nation's pity by the click of a switch hit in the midst of standoff. His body, an instant river of blood, a sound like water rushing in the ears of the arresting officers. His body falling into the road as his blood poured like water, drowning his countrymen in the very country that forgives him. Marvelous in swallowing his own self-constructed bomb. A light of hypocrisy and a Christian onslaught of unforgivable sin as the black body continues falling against the tripwire until a pooled eye in an unforgivable country. Am I too supposed to be caught beneath that water, that light meant to fill my body till it bursts in the middle of the road and falls upon the wilds of countrymen filled with the failure of themselves, a great failure of their nature written in the force of my blood, a sure explosion aimed and directed at the core of my black body, its light scattered until it blinds even the most determined of those men eager for my light. Thank y'all.